Good evening. This is CTV News. I'm Gina Barty.
And I'm Patricia Vallone. We begin tonight in Annapolis. Maryland House and Senate leaders are working together on legislation aimed at reducing violence and making communities safer. They announced a public safety package this morning in Annapolis. Lawmakers want to reduce the number of repeat offenders and strengthen laws prosecuting violent crimes. A study shows many murder suspects and victims in 2019 were on supervised probation or parole. Now, leaders say they also want to better prepare offenders for life outside of prison so they don't end up behind bars again. The bills would seek to get illegal guns off the streets and go after owners who don't report lost or stolen firearms.
The people who aren't reporting those guns lost or stolen to the police are part of the problem of illegal guns ending up everywhere in our communities across this state.
The package that we're putting forth today calls for real accountability. It calls for smarter resource allocation. And it calls for the ability of Marylanders to get illegal guns off the streets.
The legislation would also strengthen laws against witness intimidation.
A major gun control bill passes the Maryland House of Delegates. The measure would require background checks on all shotgun and rifle sales in the state. Delegates voted 87-47 to adopt the legislation, which now moves to the Senate. Advocates say current laws have loopholes which allow people with dangerous histories to easily buy weapons.
Well, Mothers Against Drunk Driving joined with lawmakers in Annapolis today to close a loophole in the law that they say is allowing impaired drivers to avoid using ignition interlocks. They say drunk drivers who are granted what's called probation before judgment, or PBJ, are often not being required to have interlocks installed on their cars. Probation before judgment allows an offender to plead guilty, but it does not count as a conviction, so they avoid the interlock. The devices are like breathalyzers. If a driver has been drinking, they prevent the car from starting. In 2016, lawmakers passed Noah's Law. It was named after Montgomery County police officer Noah Leota, who was hit and killed by a drunk driver in the line of duty. Supporters of the law say this loophole needs to be closed to make the road safer for everyone.
I ask you, why wouldn't we do everything in our power to stop these tragedies?
We know Noah's Law is working. Now let's preserve his legacy, close this loophole, and ensure that the individuals receiving a PBJ are prevented from driving drunk once again.
The original Noah's Law legislation did not have the PBJ loophole. Critics say that many lawmakers didn't know it was added in at the last minute before the vote. They say there should be strong support for strengthening the law with new leadership in the House and Senate. Meantime, history is made in Prince George's County today as the first Black female fire chief is sworn in. Byron Scott has our story.
Tiffany Green's day began in Prince George's County Council as members cast a confirmation vote. Then it was on to First Baptist Church of Glenarden for the historic swearing-in of the county's first female fire chief.
Be true to yourself and keep pushing forward.
On hand for the event today was Tony Washington, the first female fire chief of Decatur, Georgia Fire and Rescue, and Angela Alsobrooks, the first female county executive in Prince George's.
I said it earlier and we'll say it again. She was ranked #1 for every single promotional test she has ever taken in this department.
Did you know that there have only been 8 African American women fire chiefs in the nation? But today, Prince George's County, you have made history, naming Fire Chief Tiffany Green as the 9th African American woman fire chief in the history of the United States Fire Service.
And the Charter and laws of Prince George's County.
And the Charter and laws of Prince George's County.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And with that, it was official.
I have had the privilege to serve this great county for 24 years in various roles. However, when I started in this department in 1999, the concept of a female fire chief was unheard of. It was thought to be impossible.
Over the years, Green has served as a paramedic, station commander, and a deputy fire chief.
I will endeavor as your fire chief to rewrite the narrative, to support inclusion and create opportunities for the entire department.
In Glen Arden, Byron Scott, CTV News.
Well, Democrats are still anxiously awaiting the results of Monday's Iowa caucus. State party officials say a coding issue in an app reporting system is the cause of the delayed results. Results are expected to be released around 5 p.m.
When Donald Trump walks into the House chamber tonight to deliver his State of the Union address, he will do so with the stain of impeachment on his presidency. With acquittal in the Senate expected tomorrow, Trump will likely lay out his agenda for the remainder of the year. Tonight's address will be the president's third State of the Union since taking office. He's expected to follow the advice of his advisors and be more measured and less bombastic than his usual fare. Following the address, there will be responses by two Democrats, one in English and one in Spanish. The speech is scheduled to begin around 9 p.m.
Meantime, senators are giving speeches for the second straight day explaining why they plan to vote to convict or acquit President Donald Trump on 2 articles of impeachment. Each senator is allowed a maximum of 10 minutes to speak. House managers and Trump's legal team gave closing arguments yesterday. Trump is accused of withholding military aid and a White House meeting to pressure Ukraine to investigate his potential political rival, former Vice President Joe Biden, and his son, Hunter.
Yet the president shows no sign of remorse or regret. His refusal to acknowledge any wrongdoing is an ongoing threat to our country and our Constitution.
They placed the ultimate judgment not in the fractious lower chamber, but in the sober and stable Senate. They wanted impeachment trials to be fair to both sides.
The tragedy here, if the president's acquitted, it'll always be a question as to whether this was a legitimate trial here in the United States Senate.
The president's name is on ballots that have already been cast. The voters will pronounce a verdict in 9 months, and we must trust their judgment.
The Senate is expected to hold its final vote on whether to convict or acquit the president on Wednesday at 4 p.m.